Hello everybody, and welcome back to the podcast. This is To Be Candid with your host Amber, which is me, if you can work that out. I am so happy to have you back. Thank you so much for clicking on this next episode. I don't even know what episode we're at right now. The numbers are already getting confusing, which is so exciting because it means we're making a lot of episodes. It is currently a very busy day. There is a lot going on. We have flatmates in the kitchen, we have construction happening in the apartment downstairs. You know, it's just a typical little glimpse into the life of London living, you know, living in lockdown with flatmates, all the London construction that's forever constant, like it never stops, I can promise you that. But nonetheless, we have podcasts to record. This is going to be a really fun one, all about how to be confident in a world of social media, comparison, and just high expectations that I think we put on ourselves now more than ever. And I'm really excited to chat this through with you. Like always, I'm not a professional, like I have no qualifications, I'm not a therapist or anything. The whole point of this podcast is for us to almost be like two pals, just sat down having conversation, whether that's over a cup of tea in the kitchen, whether that's over FaceTime, whether that's, you know, with a porn star martini in hand at a really cool bar, wherever you can imagine yourself, whichever setting suits you best. I'm there with you, and we're there to have a candid chat all about things that people tell you you're supposed to have figured out, or that shouldn't be an issue, or things that you usually feel a little bit uncomfortable about talking about, I guess. And we're just putting it all out there, you know, we're being vulnerable, we're being open with each other, and that's what I'm here to do today. So I hope you take everything I say with a little pinch of salt. I'm not saying these things are going to cure all your problems, or these are things you definitely have to do. Like, these are just my experiences and things I've learned along the way, which I wanted to share with you like I would any of my friends. So I hope you really enjoy this podcast. But I guess if we are sat down having a casual chat before we dive into the deep stuff, I would give you a little life update. Now, honestly, like I said, I'm living in lockdown right now. There is not a lot going on, so I feel like the life updates are getting less and less as these podcasts progress. So much so that I'm now in the mindset that days of the week are a construct and time doesn't really exist. So much so that on Saturday at midnight, I decided to go ahead and make some white chocolate chip cookies. Now, usually I wouldn't have done that, but I just think because I'm not working this week, and like I said, like I'm just staying home really, I'm just trying to make the most of whenever I feel like I have enough energy to do something, whenever I feel like an urge to do something, I'm just going with it. Because honestly, I want every day to be fun, whether I'm stuck at home or living my best life in London, like whatever the scenario is, I want to be having fun and doing some random stuff. So I made white chocolate chip cookies, and guys, they're the best ones I have made yet. They were so good. And then I spent the whole of Sunday eating said white chocolate chip cookies and reading We Were Liars by E. Lockhart, which I would highly recommend. I've seen it in so many different places, like so many recommendations from different people, like influencers, friends, all of the above, and I would be one of those people to also recommend it. It was so good. I could not put it down. I finished it in 4 hours. I was kind of determined that I was going to spend the day reading this book and I was going to finish it on that day, but I did not expect to get through it as fast as I did. But it was such like a gripping book. You can't put it down. It's a bit of a psychological thriller, which I personally love. I love being like on the edge of my seat, and I find that in a book it's easier to handle. Like, I'm quite a scaredy cat when it comes to movies and stuff. Like, I don't really like scary quote unquote movies, but in a book it's just your imagination, like they're just words on a page. And I know it's the same in a movie, like they're just actors, blah blah blah, but for me a movie is way more convincing. Like, I don't know, because I'm the one imagining it in my head when I'm reading a book, I can make it as nasty or as not nasty as I like, which I much prefer. So I would highly recommend, if you're looking for like a book to take on a weekend away with you, or just have a few hours to burn reading a book, definitely would recommend We Were Liars by E. Lockhart, which I think is what it's called. Have I been saying that wrong? No, I haven't. I've been saying that right. Fabulous. So I think we'll go ahead and get into the main segment of today's podcast, I guess. I also obviously want to mention that if you have been here before, if this is not your first podcast you've clicked on, please go ahead and leave a review, because it would mean so much to me. It's how other people find the podcast, and it would also just be really cool to see your guys' feedback and what you think of the podcast so far. So definitely go ahead and do that, and obviously you can go ahead and follow us on our Instagram page, which is at 2B Candid Podcast, where I post lots of like behind the scenes, and you can also be involved in future episodes coming up, which I'm very excited about. But yeah, today we are here to talk about how to be confident with the world we live in at the moment. And I think if we're going to talk about this properly, I need to kind of take a step back and talk about my childhood for a minute, because I do really think that's kind of where your confidence stems from. I think people gain confidence, or like their level of confidence, or their default set for confidence, I guess, from a very early age. So I grew up with a very confident single working mum. My parents split when I was 5, and as much as my dad was like still very much involved, it really was my mum bringing me and my sister up. She met my stepdad a few years later after splitting with my dad, but he was never like a father figure for me, I guess because I already had my dad in the picture, and it just meant that my mum's parenting decisions and choices were hers and hers alone. Like, she didn't really, I mean, I'm so sure she did consult my stepdad, but he wasn't the one like enforcing rules or anything. So to me, I very much viewed her as like a single working mum, and she just seemed super confident. And I think that's kind of your first initial experience with confidence is through imitation, I guess, of your parents. Like for me, my mum was always very outgoing and stood up tall and was the first to talk in a conversation, and it was just very bubbly personality, and she was always, I don't know, just quite kind in the way she spoke to herself and others. And I just found that to be something that I then imitated as I was like a very tiny child growing up. So I'm sure that happens the other way around. If your parents say like sumps a little, or like is a bit withdrawn or what have you, I'm sure you kind of imitate that behaviour or that body language as well. But she was always very reassuring as well of me and my sister growing up in like who I was as a person, and she'd like shower me with confidence, with compliments and praise. And then slowly but surely I really started to believe it, which I think goes for anything. If you hear it enough times, or even tell yourself something enough times, you start to believe it, whether it be for the good or for the bad. So, you know, she'd say things like, oh, that joke was really funny, you're so clever, or it's so nice being around you, and like you have such a fun personality, like you're so pretty, and all these things. Like, that sound is really annoying, sorry if you can hear the construction. As I was growing up, that was kind of like a constant theme. So for me personally, I then started to believe it. And when people would ask me, say at school or whatever, like, oh, are you good at maths? I could think, well, my mum thinks I'm clever, so I must be clever. So I can be like, yes, I'm good at maths because I'm clever. And, you know, like those words, that belief was there already, which was so great. And I'm so thankful to my mum for doing that, because I'm sure if I hadn't had that like foundation, it would have been much harder to start off from. But likewise, I think it goes the opposite way. You know, if you hear enough times that you're a disappointment, or you're not working hard enough, or your grades aren't good enough, or you're never going to amount to anything, like whatever the variation is that kind of fits you or things you've heard, you believe those too. And I always find that the negative sticks much quicker than the positive. Like, you hear something bad once, you're more likely to believe it than if you hear something good like 5 times, you know? I think it's just the way we're wired. You know, there's that saying that bad news travels faster than good news. For some reason, we just can consume it easier, we believe it easier, and I think it goes for the same as the way and the things that you believe about yourself, which is a shame, but also I think why confidence becomes such an ongoing struggle, like throughout every phase of life. So I definitely think growing up, like as a child, like between like 1 and 13 or whatever, I was quite a confident child. And then I think it always happens that when you hit puberty, when you're a teenager, your confidence like takes a hit, your self-esteem takes a hit, because you know your body is going through all those weird changes. For me, Instagram and everything became a thing when I was a teenager. I don't have mobile phones or anything when I was a tiny tot. I'm 23, if that helps any of you place what I'm talking about. But yeah, so Instagram became a thing. Obviously there was still kind of TV and models and the Victoria's Secret fashion show, which I watched every year, and all of those things. But I think just being around that made it that much harder. And I actually remember, I don't know if this is getting too deep, but I remember the first time I looked in the mirror and didn't like what I saw. And I cried. Like, it was a shock to my system, because I'm very fortunate to say, like, that wasn't a common occurrence to me, because I had been brought up in this mindset and this belief that I was pretty and I was good enough and all of these things. I really did believe it about myself, which honestly I don't know how my mum instilled that in me, or my family instilled that in me, but it really stuck, which I was so grateful for. But I think it was my 14th birthday, or maybe even my 15th birthday, and I was getting ready to go out for sushi with my friends, and I put my outfit on and I looked in the mirror and I did not like what I saw, and it was, just a shock to the system. I literally broke down because I didn't know what to do with that information. Like, this was new information to me. I didn't know how to react to it, how to respond to it, and I think that's the same for a lot of people. And I think growing up with technology, our source for comparison and confidence does become really external. It's no longer like what we think about ourselves, but what others think about us is how we value ourselves, and therefore our confidence is affected by that, so is our self-esteem and everything like that. But I think it is important to remember that it really is an internal struggle, not an external one. I mean, yes, it's definitely influenced by external things, but I think you need to start the work internally to kind of identify where you're at and how to build on that or boost that, especially in 2021 with as many influencers and Instagram baddies and everything like that we have. It's really important to kind of look inside before you head to a social media platform to judge where your confidence is at. So with that, I think the first shift in mindset that I had to kind of adopt growing up as like a late teen was speaking kindly to myself. Like, you have to think, how would you speak to your friends? You know, like if you look in the mirror and go, oh my gosh, I'm so fat and bloated and my skin looks really bad. Would you say those words out loud to a friend? No, probably not. You'd be like, oh my gosh, that skirt looks so nice on you. It's a really good colour on you. Like, your hair's amazing, blah, blah, blah. Whatever example you want to give yourself. And I just don't understand why there's so much, like, it's so different. You should love yourself as much as you love your best friend. And you should speak as kindly to yourself as you speak to your best friend. And I think that's kind of an eye-opener. Whenever you have like a negative thought about yourself, imagine yourself saying it to your best friend, and imagine how she would feel, or he would feel, having heard that. Like, they're not going to feel good. So why do we inflict that on ourselves? Like, it really doesn't make much sense, but it's just how our brain works for some reason. So speaking kindly to yourself is definitely easier said than done, and I think it's really important to challenge those negative thoughts. So maybe when you have a negative thought, or think like, oh, I look, I don't know, really tired today, or whatever it is, maybe combat that with 3 things you like about yourself, or 3 things you appreciate about yourself, whether they are how you look, or personality traits, or the way you treat others, whatever it is, so that your mind shifts into making positive connections rather than negative ones, or thinking those positive thoughts rather than the negative ones. Again, the negative ones always stick way easier, which is so frustrating. But I think by slowly making that transition to speaking kindly to yourself, you'll hear it enough, and then you'll start to believe it, and then it's going to become like second nature. I've been practicing this for like years, consciously and subconsciously, I think, but I can definitely tell that I speak a lot nicely and kinder to myself now than I did when I was like 16, 17. Like, I was not my friend when I was 16, 17, which really sucks, because at the end of the day, you should be your own best friend. And I'm really seeing that now, especially being stuck in lockdown, where I can't go and hang out with my friends as much as I'd like to, and I am spending a lot of time like on my own or whatever. Don't get me wrong, I obviously have my boyfriend of 5 years who I live with, so we hang out all the time, but obviously he only speaks nice things to me, which again is really great and a really great confidence boost. But when he's at work or whatever and I have time with myself, I don't want to be spiraling in negative thoughts about myself. I want to be being kind to myself and having a good time. So yeah, really important to remember. Definitely easier said than done, but slowly and surely it does become second nature and just something that's ingrained in you. And I think it's so true. Like, there's that saying, that the words you speak become the house you live in. And I think that's so true. Like, that's such a good quote. I'm not sure who said it originally. I just saw it like on Pinterest and I was like, oh my gosh, that resonates so much, because I think it's really true. You know, the words that you speak about yourself become how you view yourself and how you speak about yourself to others and how you put yourself across to other people. So yeah, just keep that in mind and think carefully about the words you want to use to describe yourself and how you view yourself when looking in the mirror or on social media or whatever it is. I think it's really important. So for me personally, whenever I find myself kind of taking a hit to my self-esteem or having a period of low confidence, which we all go through, I mean, we all have peaks and troughs with our confidence. It's never like a solid thing you can rely on because it is influenced so easily by external sources. I think it's really important to evaluate where those negative thoughts are being produced from or what's triggering them. And for me personally, it is usually Instagram or some form of social media. So I would really encourage you to consider unfollowing or muting like toxic accounts or even friends on social media, whatever platform you use most, whether that's TikTok, whether it's Instagram, whether, you know, you follow people on Snapchat, whatever your vice is, I guess. Just take a look at it. I think it also becomes easier to speak kindly to yourself if you're in a good headspace, away from comparison and jealousy or judgment, which for me personally, a lot of that stems from seeing people's posts on Instagram or models or Pinterest or the amount of likes I've gained on a certain post or whatever. So I would highly recommend taking a step back and thinking about how certain people's posts make you feel, and if they don't make you feel like inspired or empowered or like you've gained something positive, maybe consider muting them or even unfollowing them altogether. You can obviously always unmute or follow back again when you're in a better headspace, but if you feel like you're being negatively influenced by someone's account, I'm sure they wouldn't want you to be following them anyway. And honestly, it's so nice being able to hop on social media. Like my Instagram right now is extremely curated to only be people who I find add value to my life, I guess would be a good way to put it, and just see pictures and posts that make you feel good and don't detract from your self-esteem or confidence, because I think it happens very quickly and very subtly, I guess is the word, like without you noticing. It just kind of creeps in because it's just there on your phone and the information and thoughts just kind of seep into your brain and you're not really conscious of every thought you have all the time. Or you'll then find like an hour later you feel a bit worse about the outfit that you're wearing that you thought at the start of the day was really cute and you don't know why. It's just something to really consider and kind of look under a microscope at and see where those thoughts are stemming from and how certain accounts make you feel, because I do think it really does have a big impact. And then obviously you can always take it one step further if, you know, you're still finding yourself in a really negative headspace and you do think social media is having an effect on that, and completely uninstall the app if you feel like you need like a little detox. Maybe I could probably do with one of these for a little, like maybe a week or 2 weeks. But over the years I have got rid of like Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and honestly my phone almost feels lighter somehow, just because my attention's being drawn into less places and I have more time to create or reflect on positive things rather than consume things that I know deep down aren't going to do me any good in the long run or make me feel less than, which is obviously not what social media is there for. I heard this thing, we're going on a tangent, but this has become a theme on this podcast, I feel like. I was listening to Armchair Expert with Tristan, the guy who did Social Dilemma was on it, Tristan, whatever his last name is, can't remember, sorry. But he was talking about how basically, I don't want to scare you, but basically how people with anxiety or depression or obsessive habits are more useful to social medias, like the company Instagram or whatever social media company it is. Those kind of habits or personalities or kinds of people are more valuable to those platforms because they spend longer on social media they follow more people, they watch more content, and they just spend more hours on it. So then they're getting exposed to more adverts and making the platforms more money from those adverts, which is really weird, because the recommendations and everything that you get, you'll often find a more extreme version of what you've just watched, and usually that more extreme version is a negative one. So the example they used was, say you googled like a diet, say you were looking at like the 16-8 diet or whatever, which is a whole conversation in itself. I don't really want to trigger anyone with that. This is just the conversation they use. But if you're googling like a certain diet, or like vegan diet or vegan recipes or whatever, or like vegan recipes to lose weight or whatever it is, the next video they recommend maybe like Thinspiration or an anorexia video or a bulimic video or whatever, which obviously is horrific and a real issue that we have, but they're kind of promoting that to make your insecurities worse, and then so your self-esteem drops, so you become more anxious, so you spend longer on social media. And that to me was just kind of terrifying, to be able to really see in that example how social media platforms are manipulating you in a negative way, for the worse, which, I don't know, just made me want to uninstall everything on my phone, to be honest. But it just makes me really realise and be conscious of who I'm following and what content I'm consuming and its effect on me, which is obviously something I've said many a time in this podcast now, but I just wanted to add that in there in case you hadn't heard that example or heard that view on social media. Something to consider. I think more importantly though, if you don't want to unfollow and you can't face uninstalling, because honestly, like, we've lived with social media for so long now, I feel like it would be like chopping off a limb at this point, then at least try and unsubscribe to the idea that what other people think of you matters. And I'm going to say that again. Unsubscribe to the idea that what other people think of you matters. I can't remember where I heard this, but I've heard someone say it. I'm sure it's like floating around the internet. And don't get me wrong, it's definitely easier said than done, and something I only really realised recently. But honestly, in your day-to-day life, if you look around you, you will see that actually no one is looking at you. Now, I don't say this to make you feel like small or insignificant or invisible in any way, but I actually find it incredibly liberating to know that I can be out here living the way I want to live, wearing whatever the heck I like, and people for the most part aren't gonna mind. Like, think about it this way. When was the last time you judged someone for what they were wearing, or vocally judged someone or disapproved of a stranger's actions? I can maybe think of like a handful, if any, where like someone spat on the floor and I didn't verbally judge them, but in my head I was like, I hate it when people do that, or that kind of thing. But I think that just goes to show that people have their own lives, their own problems, and their own situations going on that are much more pressing than you. And this is something I've had to say to Christian quite a lot. I'm not sure why, but he has this kind of mindset. It's really confusing actually to try and put into words and try and describe it. He's worried that people are going to view him in a way that isn't him. I don't know if that makes sense, but he's always paranoid. He'll like do an action or wear something and be like, oh no, I shouldn't do that because that stranger over there is going to think of me in this way, which is almost more twisted, because it's like, how do you understand someone else's psychology? Like, you have no idea what that person is thinking. I'm just trying to say, like, that person isn't looking at you, probably. So I've literally said to Christian before, like, Christian, I love you, but you are not that important. Like, people don't care about the hat that you're wearing down the street, you know, like, they have much more important issues going on in their own lives. Like, I think you have to realise, like, people have things going on beyond you. Like, it sounds so simple. And again, I don't want it to make you sound like isolated or that you're alone in the world, but for me it's so freeing to know that this is my life. Like, this little part of my world is mine and I'm living it for me, and it doesn't matter what the person on the bus thinks of me, because by tomorrow they would have forgot. It may be like a fleeting 2-second thought, but that's it. I know it's definitely probably different when you're in secondary school and you're seeing the same, or university or whatever, and you're seeing the same people every day, and that is that kind of weird popularity or social hierarchy that everyone seems to be on at high school, don't worry, like it fails at some point, like everyone gets over it and just starts living their life like normal humans, but it's definitely something we all go through at some point. So I know this is probably a lot easier said than done in those kind of situations, but in your day-to-day life, when you're just like out in public doing what you do, it's very rare that someone's going to be looking at you, to be honest. So maybe next time you're feeling insecure about something, or that someone is looking at you funny, remember that this is your life. You only get to do this once, and take comfort in the fact that they're probably feeling just as insecure as you, which I think is also really important to remember. I think sometimes we can see our really pretty friend, or our aunt that's got it all together, or our neighbour that just always has the most amazing outfits, or whatever it is, but everyone is always insecure about something. Like, you can idolise models or what have you, but in interviews they'll say like, oh, you know, I really don't like my teeth or my legs or whatever it is. Like, everyone has something that they're insecure about. So I think that's also comforting, because I think the whole like motto of this podcast is that like you're not alone, and I think that goes for the same in periods of low confidence and periods of high confidence, or just feeling insecure about certain things. Like, everyone's going through those same rhythms, so you don't need to feel alienated by it. You can take comfort in the thought that everyone's going through it at some point or another, in some form or another, and yeah, you're probably not the focus of every stranger's attention. Then obviously, like I said 100 times, definitely easier said than done, but if that's how you feel, if you're like kind of overwhelmed, like how the heck am I going to go out into the world thinking no one's looking at me, when this is kind of been my thought process, or been instilled in me for the last 10 plus years, fake it till you make it. That's the advice I'm going to give you guys. Again, I think this goes with the whole like speaking kindly to yourself thing, even if it's kind of a lie. Like, just fake it till you make it, and you don't really have to believe it straight away, and eventually the faking it will turn into believing it and just become second nature, and something you don't have to remind yourself and prompt yourself consciously to do. So yeah, just be brave, be bold, fake it till you make it. No one will question you if you act confidently, which is from Sarah's Day. I think she says that a lot over on her YouTube channel, and I think it's really true. And my last tip, but also probably one of the most crucial, which I have done a lot and has proved very useful to me, is through it all, remember why you're doing what you're doing, like what your purpose behind it is. So, like, for example, I was once dancing like a maniac at a festival, and a girl that I knew that was with us in our party of people came up to me and was like, oh my god, your boyfriend must be so embarrassed of you right now. And I could have quite easily in that moment like recoiled and stopped dancing and withdrawn from that situation, because she's verbally judging me. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's not a nice thing to say to someone. Makes me feel like people are watching me because I was dancing like a maniac. It just makes me feel very insecure. But I knew that I was dancing like a maniac because I freaking loved the song and I wanted to have fun, and I had paid like a lot of money to go to this festival and I wanted to enjoy every moment. So I danced harder than ever before. And you know what? That girl had no idea what she was talking about. My boyfriend wasn't even embarrassed at all, and I ended up having like the best night. So in those moments where you can feel you're about to lose your confidence and your self-esteem, ask yourself why you're doing what you're doing, and if it's because you enjoy it and it's fun and it's in alignment with the person you want to be, forget everything else and just go for it. I think this is so important, and just something that really builds your confidence, because you realise that, I don't know, you can challenge people's negative feedback or negative thoughts about what you're doing or why you're doing it. Like, sometimes you see people out in the street wearing the craziest outfits, and I'm sure they get a lot of strange looks or disapproving looks or whatever, but they know why they're wearing it. They know that they feel great in that outfit. They know that wearing that outfit makes them happy and that they feel confident in it. So they will continue to strut down the street, maybe hold their head a little higher, knowing that they're doing this just for them. And again, I think that's super empowering and super just liberating to know that you're in control of your own life, your actions are your choices, and knowing that your choices are benefiting you in whatever way they are, and that can make you feel more confident in the process. But yeah, they are all the tips I have and my little splurge. I feel like I spoke so fast just then. This seems to be my issue. When I'm really passionate about a subject, I can feel myself getting faster and faster. And like, I've just been, half an hour I've been recording this podcast for, and I've stumbled up, I've messed up, and it probably could have lasted a lot longer. But because I'm like so fired up about this subject, I speak so damn fast. So I really hope you got everything that I wanted to get across from this podcast. I'm sure with time I'll slow down, but for right now, this is the pace we're gonna have to stick with. But I just think it's so important, and this is the kind of thing that I wish like an older sister would have told me, or just someone a little wiser than me, or had experienced different things could have told me, because I think it would have really helped. I think sometimes when you're in those periods of low confidence or low self-esteem, you do really withdraw from whatever situation you're in and isolate yourself from other people, because you don't want to talk about the fact, like, and make yourself vulnerable that, oh, you know, I feel really bad about myself, or I don't like myself today, or whatever it is. Like, you don't want to voice that, because then it almost feels more real, like if you say it out loud. So yeah, I think it's really important to just be candid about these subjects and just break down the stigma that everyone feels confident all the time, or that low confidence shouldn't be spoken about, because it's something everyone goes through at some point. They're probably definitely multiple times within their life, like many times people will go through highs and lows with their confidence. Like I said, it is an internal struggle that I think everyone deals with, because we are so easily influenced by the external sources that I've mentioned, like social media and everything like that. So yeah, if anything, I hope you just speak a little kinder to yourself and are more intentional with your actions and your choices, knowing that they're making you happy, and kind of unsubscribing from the idea that what other people think of you matters, because it really doesn't. If at the end of the day you can feel proud of yourself, like you've done yourself well, and that you've achieved something, or you enjoyed your day, or you can look back on that day fondly, what does it matter what other people may or may not have thought? It really doesn't. And I know it's so much easier said than done, but I just hope that me voicing this out, putting it out there, has kind of made you realise that maybe you could give it a go and see how you feel. But I'm going to leave this podcast here. I definitely need a drink of water. I'm like sweating because I got so hyped up about this conversation. So I hope you enjoyed it too. If you did, please go ahead and leave me a review. It would mean so very much to me. But I just want to thank you all so much again for being here. Obviously, this is a new venture for me, something I'm diving into head first, feet first, whatever the saying is, and just really getting stuck into, and I'm really enjoying the process. So I hope you're enjoying it as much as I am. I will be back next Tuesday with a brand new episode, which I'm so excited about. I think it's going to be a good one. So hopefully I will see you there. Bye.